Okay, colleagues, thanks for joining. I think people will trickle in as we proceed. So I don't think we have to wait because the recording also will be available later. So let us start. There are about, I think, 60, 70 signed up for this event, but we only see few joined right now. But however, I think because of the time and we have to also finish the session within the allocated time, so we will start the session straight away. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening everyone, and thanks for joining this webinar, and welcome to this GLOCAL webinar on building a child-focused evaluation evidence synthesis system. I am Jay Chandran, an evaluation specialist in the institutional effectiveness team within the evaluation office. I will be moderating today's session. Let me first begin by introducing our presenters. First, we have Erika Matlone, Chief of Institutional Effectiveness Team, and Kaira Variava, Evaluation Officer, both my colleagues from the Evaluation Office. They will share more about themselves later. Our third presenter, Fiona Campbell, from the University of Birmingham, is unfortunately unable to join us today due to other commitments. We apologize actually for her absence. Before I hand over the mic to Erika and Kara, I would like to share a brief overview of UNICEF's evaluation function, an important one within UNICEF. The evaluation function in UNICEF plays a central role in helping the organization achieve its mission for children globally, particularly the most vulnerable and marginalized, by ensuring decisions are informed by robust and credible evidence. Evaluation is not simply about assessing or reviewing past performance. It is also a forward-looking function designed to learn and help deliver better results for children. Each year, UNICEF conducts more than 150 evaluations across a range of areas, including thematic, impact, and institutional effectiveness, and humanitarian, and also country program evaluations. These evaluations provide an independent, impartial, and credible assessment of key questions. What is really working and how? What is not working and why? What can we do better? And how can we do better? Many evaluations are also conducted jointly with the governments, UN agencies, and other development partners, reflecting our commitment to collaboration and shared learning. The evidence generated through these evaluations informs UNICEF's policies, programs, advocacy efforts, and strategic partnerships. At the same time, the UNICEF evaluation function also contributes to strengthening national evaluation capacity and systems, working closely with governments and other development partners. Let me now turn to the relatively new and rapidly evolving evaluation synthesis. Today, evidence is often fragmented and scattered. Bringing this evidence together, especially credible ones, in a systematic way is challenging, yet it is essential. We generate strong, more credible, and more actionable insights. As we approach the final years of the 2030 agenda, we must continue asking ourselves, are we doing the right things? Are we doing them well? And what can we do to accelerate progress for children? Recognizing that these challenges cross organizational boundaries, UNICEF is working closely with other development partners like UNDP under the umbrella of United Nations Evaluation Group and the Global SDG Synthesis Coalition with more than 40 development partners as members to enhance the collective impact of evaluations. To help address these systemic gaps, UNICEF commissioned a global evaluation evidence synthesis, covering more than 600 evaluations conducted between 2018 and 2022 that met established quality standards. Thanks to the emergence of artificial intelligence, processing this vast volume of material has become faster, more feasible, and far more affordable. You will hear much more about this exciting synthesis work from Erica and Kyra in just a moment. I will now just briefly share the kind of overview of today's session. First, we will be having an evaluation synthesis overview that will cover a little bit in terms of why and all that, and then methodology that will talk about SIFT review, EpiMapper, etc. And then there will be results presented and lessons learned, and then we will be having some looking forward session in terms of what we can do next moving forward. Then at the end, we will also be having some question and answer time for Q&A. Before actually we go into the presentation, let us do some kind of pulse check of those who joined the session. So I will request my colleague Kyra to just put those questions up front so that participants just respond to those questions. Thank you, Kyra. Okay, I see some 5 responses, so I think it's okay. So many of them, I think, responded. Most of them are somewhat familiar or moderately familiar, or few of them actually not at all familiar. I think we can move to the next one. So this is, have you ever conducted or participated in any evidence synthesis work? Okay, so this is interesting. All 6, we have 6 responses now. All have some experience or they participate in the synthesis. Okay, there are some no also coming now. Okay, that is good. So that means we will be having very good exchanges later on this topic. That is really good. So now I think I will just move into a little bit of housekeeping reminders before we start the actual presentation. So please keep your microphone muted throughout the presentation, and then feel free to post your questions and comments in the chat anytime. We will address as many as possible during the session, and if time permits, I think that will be the case, and you will also have the opportunity to ask questions directly by raising your electronic hand at the end. So with this, it is my pleasure to hand over the mic to Erica. Over to you, Erica. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jay, and good morning, good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you so much for joining us for this GLOCAL session. My name is Erica Mattellone. I'm a senior evaluation specialist here at UNICEF Evaluation Office, where I lead the institutional effectiveness team. Together with my team, I carry out global evaluation to understand how UNICEF operates as an organization and provide recommendations so that the organization can be more effective and efficient in achieving its mandate for every child. And then also we carry out regularly a global evaluation evidence synthesis to generate synthesize evidence about not only what works, but also how we can enhance our programs and make them more effective for the children we are here to support. So it's a great honor and pleasure for me to take you today through this session on the work we do at UNICEF when it comes to evidence synthesis. And as you may have seen throughout this year, GLOCAL, there is a great deal happening, not only in the field of artificial intelligence, but also in the field of evidence synthesis. So it's really fantastic for me and my team to contribute to this broader conversation through UNICEF work on global evaluation evidence synthesis. And I would like to start by saying that, at a time when, resources for international development and humanitarian aid are increasingly constrained and questions and are raised about effectiveness, it's more important probably than ever to understand not only whether programs work, but also what works for whom, under what conditions, how and why. And as Jay explained, at UNICEF, we conduct every year a large amount of evaluations, approximately 150 evaluations every year. And these evaluations do generate a very rich body of independent evidence on results achieved, lessons learned, and opportunities for improvement, supporting learning, accountability, but also organizational performance. So I think for us at UNICEF, but also more broadly, the challenge is not a lack of evidence, right? It's how to make sense of the growing volume of evidence generated across countries, sectors, and program areas. And at the same time, advances in AI are creating new opportunities to analyze larger volumes of data more quickly, systematically, and at a greater scale. So this is why we partner with Fiona Campbell and colleagues from Newcastle University at the time when we started this work. They are at the forefront of evidence synthesis research and practice. And together we wanted to undertake the first ever UNICEF Global Evaluation Evidence Synthesis. And I believe a link to the report, if it's not there already, should soon appear in the chat to respond to this need to compile, summarize evidence and be able to answer to bigger questions. So the objective really for us was not, simply to summarize evaluation findings and recommendations, but, really to bring knowledge together from hundreds of evaluations to understand what has worked, what has not worked, and why. And here you have on the slide an overview of what we try to achieve with this work. So you can see that the synthesis was really designed to help us better understand what UNICEF has achieved for children and adolescents globally, and how these achievements contribute to advancing not only UNICEF mandate, but also more globally the the Sustainable Development Goals. So beyond promoting learning and accountability and elevating recurring lessons and recommendation, the synthesis had three main objectives for us. So the first was, really to map out the existing evaluation evidence base and identify areas where evidence is strong, as well as areas where, further evaluation and learning may be needed. Second, we wanted to look across UNICEF programmatic goal areas and result areas to, identify common enabling and hindering factors, basically, the how question that are associated with achieving certain results for children. And third, our goal was to draw on recurring lessons and recommendations so that we can inform future programming in the organization, policy and monitoring standards, but also enhance our evaluation practice. So to put it simply, the synthesis provided us with an opportunity to generate a big picture, big photo overview of UNICEF contribution to results for children, drawing on all the evidence, all the evaluations that are regularly generated by the organization. And it allows us to move beyond, individual evaluation reports and identify broader partners, recurring teams, strategic insights, so that we can better support decision-making at scale. Also, I think it's important to underline that this work for us also illustrated the growing role that new technologies can play in evaluation, and we will discuss shortly the tools that we use to carry out this work. But I would say, in short, AI-enabled evidence synthesis approaches can help us navigate large bodies of evidence so that we can, identify partners, insights, and so on. And this would have been, very difficult and much more cumbersome just a few years ago. At the same time, and I really want to stress this point, for us, the principles of evaluation remain unchanged. So we have done this work using rigor, transparency, but also in a way that can be reproduced. And for us, human judgment also remain essential. So AI can help us work efficiently and a greater scale, but for producing credible evidence synthesis, it's important to have a sound methodology and also use critical thinking and expert interpretation of the findings. So in this work that we did, we had a key question that we sought to answer across all the evidence. That was, what insights do evaluation provide on UNICEF progress in enabling children and adolescents to reach their full potential? And to answer that question, I'd like to take you very briefly through the methodology that we use, and then we are also going to be looking at the results. So as I've said, at the heart of this work, there is a significant evidence base. Over 600 UNICEF evaluation reports across a number of years, covering multiple sectors, outcomes, regions, country context, and so on. And for us at UNICEF, this report represents one of the largest collection of evaluation evidence available within the organization. So the challenge was how to analyze, such a large and diverse body of evidence, often, presented in different languages, while, maintaining the rigor, transparency, and reproducibility that are fundamental to evidence synthesis. And this is why, for us, technology play such an important role. And it was not just, as you will see in a moment, one, single tool. We really use as part of our methodology combine set of tools, complementary technologies, and the methodology was designed in a way also to address also different aspects of the workflow to produce a solid evidence synthesis report. So for the review and analysis phase, we use Swift Review, which is a specialized evidence synthesis platform that applies text mining and machine learning techniques to support the identification, screening, and coding of evidence across large document collections. And I think it's also important for those of you that are not maybe familiar with Swift Review to stress that Swift Review is not a generative AI tool. So unlike large language models that generate text or summaries, Swift Review supports a more structured and transparent review process, and basically helps you locate, classify, and organize all the relevant information across hundreds of documents. And I think this distinction is important because it really allows you to preserve traceability, transparency, reproducibility that are, as I said, really essential for credible evidence synthesis. And also, what was valuable was that it allows us really, to work across hundreds of very lengthy evaluation reports. Normally on average, our evaluation reports are, 60, 80 pages long. So rather than, reading them one after another, we were really able to use machine assisted searching and screening to identify in these reports, what are the relevant findings, what are the relevant lessons, what are the recommendations. And this has allowed us to produce a solid evidence synthesis report in the end. So in addition to that, also the process combine piloted data extraction framework that we use to systematically capture this evidence. And for that, we basically coded elements in evaluation reports that were relevant to UNICEF strategic plan framework. So really looking at, the indicators and results that UNICEF is monitoring as an organization. And then we have synthesized not only quantitative data, but also we have conducted a number of qualitative interviews with experts in different sectors, and then triangulated the findings to understand not only the outcomes, but also, the mechanisms mechanism, the contextual factor that, may also influence certain outcomes. So it was a very, comprehensive methodology combining different tools and using not just, the machine, but also, a human approach. So we were, very much in the loop in conducting this work, and we were able to combine quantitative also data with qualitative data emerging from experts interview. So the result of this was a report, but also one of the output was an evaluation evidence and gap map. And my colleague Kara will shortly introduce the evaluation evidence and gap map, which was produced using EPI reviewer to classify evaluations. And also we were able to produce, and here is just an example, a number of heated maps also to illustrate the magnitude of the evidence we have at hand across regions in which our organization operate or across programs. So this is just to illustrate that out of an evidence synthesis, there are also a number of products that can be generated and can together also support organizational learning and evidence inform decision making. So with that, I will now hand over to Kara, who will introduce herself and also demonstrate how we use EPI Reviewer to develop the evaluation evidence and gap map, and show how this also visualization can help us explore and learn from UNICEF evaluation evidence base. Kyra, over to you.
Thank you, Erica. And just like she mentioned, my name is Kyra. I'm from the Institutional Effectiveness team in the Evaluation Office at UNICEF. And I will be happy to take you through what Erica briefly kind of introduced as what we know as the Evaluation Evidence and Gap Map. And this map is essentially a visual and interactive overview of the over 631 UNICEF evaluations that have been organized by goal areas across regions and different themes. And the way we really set about doing this was what Erica called the EPI Reviewer and EPI Mapper, which are two software tools that we use to systematically code, manage, and synthesize evidence from multiple evaluation sources in a more structured way. And so EPI Reviewer acts as this systematized coding system, and EPI Mapper in turn is a visualization tool that organizes this coded evidence, be it in our portfolio, as you can see, the interventions, the outcomes, the themes, into what we see as an interactive map to help us identify patterns, gaps, and clusters in the evidence base. And what it essentially allows us to do is to really step back and see the bigger picture of where the evidence exists, and just as importantly, where it doesn't. And so rather than looking at these individual evaluations in isolation, we were able to really identify patterns across countries, regions, areas where we have strong evidence, and critical gaps where, more learning and more evidence is needed. And so it's designed to be very practical, where you can actually click into specific evaluations, filter by themes or regions, and really explore those findings directly linked to them. And what I think is really powerful about this tool is that it helps us shift to a more strategic and system level overview rather than more fragmented insights. And so with that, we thought instead of talking you through it, we'd show you a quick video of really how this map works and to give you a sense of how you can use it.
Introducing the new UNICEF Evaluation Evidence Gap Map,
an interactive tool that complements the global evaluation synthesis by summarizing evidence from evaluations conducted by UNICEF. In today's complex and rapidly evolving world, this tool provides a quick overview of global, regional, and country-level evaluations, helping identify existing evidence and knowledge gaps on effective strategies to achieve outcomes for children and adolescents. The map is designed to provide an overview of the existing evidence on the strategic plan goal and results areas across the countries and regions where UNICEF operates. For each goal and results areas, the map highlights where there is a gap in the evidence base or where there is more abundant evidence. In the map, the evaluations have been represented by bubbles coded with different colors to indicate the Global Evaluation Report Oversight System ratings, ensuring their reports meet UNICEF norms and standards. Only satisfactory evaluations are included in the map, and in detail, an exceptional evaluation is colored in orange, a highly satisfactory in green, and a satisfactory in blue. The size of each bubble corresponds to the number of evaluations conducted in each region and country across different goal or result areas of UNICEF's strategic plan. So, what can you do with this map? By clicking on each bubble, you can access evaluation summaries and links to the full reports. You can also expand the cells to view details for each country and/or strategic plan areas, enabling a more focused and targeted study. In addition, you can navigate using filters. In the Filters tab, you will find options to narrow down the evaluations displayed on the map. Clicking on the Filters tab to the left of your screen, you can narrow down your search based on several criteria, such as the type of evaluation, Kiros rating, year of publication, language, cross-cutting themes, and organizational performance enablers. In fact, the map allows you to visualize the evidence from outcome and impact level evaluations, namely those exercises that intend to assess the effects generated by UNICEF interventions. Let's try this in practice. Suppose you would like to know more about the evaluations that have been conducted in Togo with a satisfactory GROS rating. First, extend the sliding bars at the top of the map under the West and Central Africa region. A column presenting the evidence of each goal and results areas by each country in the selected region will appear. Hovering over each cell will tell you how many evaluations have been conducted for a given goal or result area. Clicking on a cell will lead you to a dedicated page where you can find a summary and several key information related to each evaluation. Now, dive into our evaluation evidence gap map and explore UNICEF's progress towards achieving results for children. Thank you. And with that, we would like to now walk you through some of the key results that we found through this evidence synthesis. And the map, of course, was very, very critical in helping us draw on these 600 evaluations. And for the purpose of this section, I will keep this a pretty high level, focusing on a simple thread of what seems to be working, where we're seeing these challenges, and what this means going forward. And the way we try to structure these results, just to make it more digestible, is through UNICEF's goal areas. And for people who are new to UNICEF, what are these goal areas? Well, goal areas in UNICEF are the main thematic outcome domains where we have health and nutrition, education, child protection, social protection, water, sanitation, and hygiene. And so they really structure the organization's work and results for children in the strategic plan of 2022 to 2025. And so moving into the first goal area, which is every child thrives for help, is what we found as one of the more significant results across goal area 1, with looking through a total of 85 evaluations included in our analysis. And what really stands out here is that progress is happening in the face of a multitude of interventions working together. So we're not just seeing impacts from, one-off actions, but instead a combination of immunization efforts, of community engagement, awareness-raising initiatives, health education efforts that really reinforce each other to drive this progress forward. And a big enabler across the board has been capacity. So when government staff are trained and frontline health workers have the right information at the right time, these programs just become more effective. So we see the importance of logistics and infrastructure helping upgrading health centers to ensure that supplies reach the beneficiaries. And interestingly, cash transfers come up here as a way to help families actually access these services. But at the same time, the synthesis also found certain barriers and challenges, such as communities being rather hard to reach because of geographical or language barriers. Sometimes coordination isn't always the most efficient, as we've seen. Sometimes UNICEF teams tend to work more in silos, and there is a little bit of a, miscommunication or lack of communication there that can really lead to creating these gaps. And data gaps, of course, also make this harder to track progress and really adapt. And so the key takeaway here is that impact comes when these systems work together, but these systems sometimes need to be, connected and more equitable in that reach. So that was what we really understood from the goal area 1. Moving to goal area 2, which is in education, if every child learns and acquires skills, across the 79 evaluations, across 8 outcomes, one thing we saw that was quite consistent is pretty simple. It's financial support works. And cash transfers in specific were found to be very helpful at helping children stay in school. But what is the complicated part here is that its effectiveness really depends on how these cash transfers were designed. So for example, if transfers don't keep up with inflation, their impact of course drops. And sometimes we also found these negative consequences that are unintended. But for example, when financial support is given to a child, they may inadvertently be disqualified from receiving free school meals. And another unintended consequence was the fact that this also led to almost over-enrollment, and that could result in overcrowded classrooms and resources that were, more constrained and not reached to everybody. So beyond that, UNICEF's advocacy with governments has also played an important role in really pushing for spending more on education, even if that is hard to, directly measure. And another important finding that the synthesis found was that training female teachers in specific has had a major effect and impact on girls' enrollment and the provision of infrastructure and services. For example, the construction of classrooms, community-based health services really was found as another positive. But there are still some challenges. Awareness is one important finding, that some families don't even know that these programs exist, and systems tend to get strained, as we previously outlined, and data to track these outcomes sometimes is not the strongest. So the takeaway here is that financial support can definitely open these doors, but it only really translates to these real outcomes when these systems, communication, and data are really strong. So moving to the third goal area being child protection, where every child is protected, that is clear evidence of progress, where we see reductions in violence and harmful practices against children like female genital mutilation. And what seems to work well in this domain is that child advocacy centers and child protection units, safe spaces for youth and youth programs, and again, so strong systems around these Capacity building plays a big role here too. For example, training judges and police so that children are treated appropriately in justice systems was important. But this is also where we see some deeper challenges where programs again struggle with limited resources. And when these kind of systems fail, it not only affects the intended beneficiaries of these programs, but it also affects the trust and the morale built in these communities. So more importantly, these issues seem to be tied to a deep-rooted, social norm, which is much harder to shift. And so services are really important here, but lasting change requires transforming these systems and these social norms at the same time. Goal area 4 is water, sanitation, and hygiene, where every child can access these. And among the 79 evaluations assessed within this synthesis, what we're finding is that one of the strongest outcomes is community ownership. Many reports highlighted the positive outcomes result from these community-led total sanitation initiatives, and it really starts instilling responsibility at a local level. And this was reinforced by menstrual health support, water infrastructure, and resilience building efforts. And UNICEF standing also really helps engage governments and influence policies around disaster risk reduction. But at the same time, there are some trade-offs where some programs seem to be more focused on short-term emergency responses and don't always seem to connect to the long-term needs. And that is something that we can see, capacity can be built in. We see challenges with coordination across ministries and sometimes decisions not being fully strategically aligned, and initiatives spanning multiple ministries sometimes almost seem to reduce UNICEF influence. And we saw these weak monitoring and lack of clear indicators that made it harder to track that progress, even if progress was there. So the takeaway here is that key community-led approaches work, but if they're embedded in these longer-term, well-monitored systems. And finally, we move to goal area 5 of social protection. And here, one of UNICEF's biggest strengths is its convening power. And what I mean by that is UNICEF is very effective at bringing partners together and influencing how these resources are allocated for children. And so UNICEF has helped stakeholders make informed decisions and strengthen capacities in public finance management systems, and also mobilizing previously what we had talked about being the cash transfers. But at the same time, some structural challenges show up again, being, now we see this theme of reliance on a single source of funding, not enough engagement with sometimes the private sector, difficulty reaching these, communities that are most marginalized, and high turnover among frontline workers. And of course, these data gaps can limit how we can assess impact. So to, understand that UNICEF can influence systems at scale, but sustaining that impact requires these broader partnerships, stronger delivery systems, and just better, robust data. So stepping back across all 5 goal areas, there's actually a very consistent pattern. We are seeing real progress, but of course that is sometimes constrained by fragmented systems, insufficient data, and challenges in sustaining impact over a long-term period. And I think that's why this conversation on evidence synthesis becomes so important, because it's not just about, generating more evidence, but it's about how can we connect that, learn from it, and use it in a more continuous and systematic way. And so, just looking across these evaluations, there are several recurring recommendations that are emerging. And instead of going down through the list of 7, we thought we would just briefly summarize it for you. First, the need to continue strengthening a child rights base and a child-centered approach. So we ensure that children's rights remain at the heart and center of our programming and decision making. Second, we need stronger cross-sectoral collaboration. The challenges facing children rarely fit within this neatly sectored boundaries, and our responses need to reflect that reality. Third, we need stronger communication and partnerships. This is both within UNICEF and with our external stakeholders to really continue improving alignment, coordination, and learning. We also need to focus on implementation quality, sustainability, stronger data systems so that results can be measured more effectively and sustained over time. And finally, we need to continue fostering this innovation agenda, right? Not just in programs, but also in the way we generate, synthesize, use evidence, such as these evidence syntheses. And taken together, these lessons can really provide us with a roadmap for strengthening both programming and evaluation, and they really point UNICEF towards a future that is more child-centered, more collaborative, and evidence-informed, which ultimately mean more effect for and impact for children. And with that, I will pass it back to Erica to take us through the next stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kyra, for synthesizing all this evidence so brilliantly. Before we open it up for questions, but also to take the time to answer already some of the reflections you're sharing in the chat, I'd like also to reflect on, some of the key lessons and also opportunities we identify in conducting this work. And I would say, one of the key lessons for us was that there is much more evidence out there than actually we know about. Here you have, for example, a slide about evidence from global clinical trial publications, and as you can see, most of the evidence is actually coming from the global north, right? So what we realize through this work, through the evidence that UNICEF evaluation function produces, is that our evaluations, together with the many other evaluations produced by sister UN agencies, but also other organizations working in international development and humanitarian aid, can help, really fill an important gap by, really generating evidence from the global south, from countries where many of the world children live, and where, of course, development challenges are often most acute, and there is a greater need for evidence. So through this work, there is really, an opportunity not only for UNICEF, but also for the broader evaluation community to learn from evidence generated in this context and make also better use of it in global decision making. Also, I think another lesson for us was that while we were able to identify and extract a large volume of information using machine assisted approaches, it was often difficult to compare findings across evaluation, and this is because often data were limited or not always, reported consistently across evaluations. Baseline were sometimes missing, outcome measure varied. So there are still, challenges in synthesizing evidence from these evaluation reports. But, this is also an opportunity also for strengthening how, as an organization, we collect, structure, report, and, also share evaluation evidence. And ultimately, I do believe that, better data quality and greater consistency across our evaluations will make it easier to learn across programs, across countries, across sector. Also, in conducting this work, we realized that there was also an opportunity to carry out a number of cross-country analysis, and this is very helpful because individual evaluations help us understand what happens in a particular program, in a particular context, but as you can see here, this is an example of an analysis we did on cash transfers and how cash transfer can support enrollment in school. There is actually, additional evidence we can generate when we compare how programs work across countries. Look at the design. In this case, we look, for example, at the amount of a transfer and the impact in terms of school attendance. So there is really an opportunity here when we compare results across evaluation to go more deeper into why do similar interventions produce different results, what are the contextual factors, what can we learn from variations in program design and implementation. And then I think another important and last lesson came across the type of outcomes we measure. Across many evaluations, we found that, often there is evidence on program reach, service uptake, enrollment, for example, when it comes to education of children in school, but there is less evidence available out there on longer term outcomes that ultimately matter for children. So, for example, in the case of educational outcomes. And I think this is an important reminder that while proxy indicators are important in our theory of a change, they only tell us part of the story. And as evaluator, we need to continue exploring ways to better measure and understand longer term outcomes and impacts for children. So to conclude, I just wanted to highlight that ultimately this was the first UNICEF global evaluation evidence synthesis we carry out, really help the organization at the global level. For example, we saw how the organization utilized the results of the evidence synthesis, for instance, to inform our new strategic plan framework that is basically, the direction of travel for the organization in the years to come. And moving forward, what we are now working towards is to, really power up the use of AI-assisted tools to generate evidence synthesis, but we are also working toward a more dynamic evaluation evidence and gap map, so that we can continuously update the map as new evaluations become available. And then we also see opportunities to embed evidence synthesis more directly into evaluation planning to help prioritization for instance, and also decision-making processes by working closely with those responsible for policy development and strategic planning. And with that, I thank you for your attention, and I'm gonna give it back to Jay. Jay, over to you.
Thank you very much, Erika and Kaira, for the excellent presentation. So we are now into the last segment, that is Q&A. We have already some good questions in the chat, so I will try to kind of club them because some of the questions are kind of similar. So we have a question from Kerry and Kristen, basically, and they are asking, are we seeing any kind of use of this particular evidence gap map in decision making? So that is one. And second, actually, from Kerry is asking a question, are we planning to make this as a kind of living kind of evidence map system? I think that is what, of course, I think Kerry, Erika, you can expand a little bit more on that. So I think if, Erika or Kaira, you want to touch upon these two questions first, and then we can move to the next ones. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, so very briefly, when it comes to the use of this work in decision making, actually there is a growing demand. The global evaluation evidence synthesis was heavily used to inform our new strategic plan. So the plan that basically sets the direction of the organization in terms of focus on certain priorities areas, but also some programs rather than others. And then also there is a constant demand we see for this type of work also to inform regular review processes in the organization, at least at the global level. What's interesting is that also this work sparkle a lot of interest for evidence synthesis at the regional and national level where UNICEF operates. So just to give you an example, now we're working very closely with one of our country offices to generate a similar synthesis at the national level to then be able to inform the government on what policies, what programs do work for children, what are the results that have been achieved by the policies that have been implemented, and what adjustments should be made. So what I think was interesting is that our focus was at the, of course, global strategic level, but this also then foster interest for evidence synthesis, evaluation, evidence synthesis in other also parts of the organization, with of course the opportunity also to generate greater impact. And indeed, we are looking at making this more and more regularly updated evidence synthesis work. It's a work in progress, and now our evaluation evidence and gap map is already updated more regularly as soon as we get new reports that are of high standards into the system, and we are also working on making the synthesis a live document.
Thank you very much, Erika. So we have another question from Kerry also in terms of, is there any kind of advantage of using these methods compared to traditional ones? So maybe you can just briefly tell. And then there is also a question from Ahmed in terms of goal area 1. Some of the things are not reflected. Kaira, you want to maybe expand if time permits? So please keep your answers brief because we are already out of time. Sorry for that. Over to Erika and Kaira.
Yeah, very briefly on the use of traditional evidence synthesis software for research when synthesizing evaluation evidence. I will say that one of the challenges has been that evaluation reports, at least at UNICEF, are not always, structured in a way that allows to extract evidence easily. But this work has also allow us to provide recommendation, for example, to have better abstracts and articulate better evidence in evaluation reports than for synthesis work. Kaira, would you like to add more to any of the questions?
No, just to say that we know we're almost out of time, but we will definitely, if not reply back to everyone in the chat. But just to briefly acknowledge Emma's point to say that, yes, it is an important point that you're flagging that a lot of the evidence base that we had was stronger on the output and intermediate outcomes that prioritize more service delivery metrics. But I think it's a great point that you mentioned, and we would love to, respond in further detail and send you the details of the report, which I'm also now going to put in the chat if anyone wants to take a further look at this. But I'll pass it back to Jay now, given that we've already taken 1 minute of everyone's time. But thank you so much once again for all your engaging questions.
Thank you very much. So now we are coming to the end of this interesting webinar. So once again, thank you very much for joining despite your busy schedules, and we really appreciate it. But however, before you leave, we have 2 small simple questions. If time permits, please respond to those. That will be helpful for us to improve future sessions. Thank you very much. Have a nice day, rest of the day, or have a nice evening wherever you are. Bye for now.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.